a couple of projects that we can use to learn and share from as well. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, can I just say, if you've got like problems on something you're working on at the moment, are they things that maybe 360 could help you with? And if you don't think it could, maybe it's worth asking Barry, because maybe it could. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe it could actually help you out. It could be very specific to something you're doing at the moment.
Good. Okay. Shall I start, Richard, do you think?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know where Barry is at the moment, but I spoke to him at 8 o'clock, but he's perhaps got tied up somewhere.
Well, that'll do it to most people.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just explain where we're thinking at the moment, just to make sure that everybody's up to speed. Some of you will have seen some of these things, but it drops it into a narrative, as it were. Okay, so the majority of the use of 360s we think is going to be on existing buildings, but there's obviously 360s being captured on new builds as well. So we can talk about that. But on existing buildings, people may have a BIM model. They will have CAD drawings, either PDFs or DWGs. They may have COBie data. Hopefully they should have health and safety files and O&Ms, and also 360 photographs. Now, the challenge with that is that typically those are all separate. They're all disconnected in different files. And the result of that is that if anybody's trying to do any sort of audits or whatever, everything's got to be manually checked and processed. So that's where we've got problems. So what we're trying to do is bring together those different data sets and connect them all up by basically making them smart enough to be integrated, federated, make them auditable, which is increasingly important, obviously, with the Building Safety Act, and also connectable, so that they can connect into lots of different systems. And the methodology that we're using to do that is that if there are BIM models, either old ones or new ones, we can extract the information that they contain just using standard COBie. But there's a lot of things that never get modeled. In particular, the detailed M&E information, in which case they can be in the form of schedules. So we can pull, for example, ironmongery schedules, or maybe even damper schedules into a standard format. And we can also use technical submittals to connect them to product information. And where all of that fails, we've got 360 photographs, because the as built is actually the 360 photograph. There are very few projects that we come across where the BIM models have actually been completed with all of the information that you need from an asset management point of view. We may argue that they should be, but in practice, there's not normally the commercial driver to do that. So that also means the 360s make it a lot easier to keep things up to date. So what we're doing is we're trying to create the 360s in such a way that they are more searchable. We're making that so that we can connect information in the 360s to other data sets like asset libraries. So one of the things that we're doing is really creating smart 360s rather than standard 360s that it requires a human to read. And by doing that, it means they can be connected to all of the other great information sets that may be in different applications. They may just be references, and like the Uniclass reference, for example, but we can connect all of those to make them much more easily findable. Now, what Barry's been showing is the data capture side of things, the 360 capture. And there's lots of different ways that that can be done. It can be done with just simple 360 cameras on a tripod, which is what a lot of them are being done now. If there's value in having a proper LiDAR scan with that's maybe being used for also construction purposes, there's things like the Leica, there's the Faro, and there's the Navis cameras, which Justin was just mentioning there. So there's lots of different ways of capturing the 360s. There's also a wide range of applications that have been built up increasingly during construction. So these applications are largely taking 360 photos, and the purpose of those is really quality management, reducing risk of claims, also managing claims against subcontractors. I imagine the main contractors would be doing. But those 360s that's all they're typically used for. But they're very valuable because they show what was there before spaces were completed. So we as Active Plan have been talking to all of these people, and we've now got relationships with most of them where we can take the 360s that they produce and then use them. Now, clearly, we're not the only people that can do this, but what I'm showing you here is how we can take 360s, however they're being created, and use them in different ways. Now, what are the different ways that we can use? Now, if you've been on the previous sessions, you will see that we've done a huge amount with asset capture. We've now done 12,000 spaces. We've done 140,000 assets, and we're using that to train large language models to recognize what those items are. But the key thing is that it's a lot quicker to capture the information using 360s than it is to send surveyors to site. They can be used also, because what we're doing is turning them into something that's intelligent. They can be used to validate against existing information. So if there's COBE data, if there's information about what should have been installed, the 360s can be used to validate against those and then identify what's missing or what's additional to what was in the schedules. We're now moving on to the next level, which is using it for condition assessment. So we've got a range of survey firms now starting to look at this from a point of view of being able to do life cycle assessment and condition assessment without having to send their expensive people to site. So we've got a project at the moment where we're looking at I think it's 800 buildings, which, I mean, that would just be hugely labor intensive, also with lots of different people. So we think that's a good way forward. We've identified that one of the areas that is probably quite wasteful in the industry is where procurement teams go out to the market and they procure surveys, for example, but they don't really know how many assets that they've got. So we're thinking procurement could be an interesting team to get involved with. We've not spoken to procurement people yet, but if you've got procurement people in your organization or you're dealing with them, then that might be worth worth opening up a conversation with. 360 safety, being able to use it to assess, identify risks, and safety management and complex areas. 360 access, certainly for PEEPs, the personal evacuation plans, we think 360s could be very useful from that perspective, but also generally identifying where there may be access issues for disabled people. Fire risk assessments, that's another one that we have identified talking to people that are producing or consuming fire risk assessments, to be able to see the context of these things. 360 O&Ms. So this is being able to navigate around an O&M using the 360 photographs. Now, we think that's a very interesting thing that we ought to be exploring. And obviously, finally, there's the golden thread element. So I'm going to pause there for the moment and just ask if anybody's got any suggestions or ideas that we've not come across yet that you'd like to contribute.
Hi, George. It's Matt. Just a quick one for me. I think it's important for PFI PPP handbacks because it's also about the time stamping. So actually having the 360 there is very useful for when you actually want to validate, in the sense of you may have some legacy issues. You may have things like the RDS doesn't match. It may be the case of fire stopping. It may be the case of checking above ceilings and evidence in it. So a lot of that could be very practical, so that the to and fro when you get into legalities is reduced, because images are a much easier thing to show the truth than words going backwards and forwards, and then about 3 different people visiting the same space to look at the same thing. So I think that's a key one.
I like that one, but Matt, that's so 360 handback. I don't know if anybody on the call may get involved in that sort of thing. I think Justin, you may. That might be an interesting one. Justin, you had a dedicated group within Airy Miller looking at PFI, didn't you?
Sorry, George, what was that again?
I think you had a work stream in Airy Miller looking at PFI, didn't you?
Yes, we have. Yeah, it's not something we've touched on with the 360, but yeah, there is scope there in the future.
Yeah, I mean we've got information about the what's needed for PFI because we know it quite well. We've got lots of PFI contracts on, so that might be worth a conversation on.
Yeah, definitely, we can take that offline.
Cool. And Caroline, you're in a PFI, aren't you?
Sorry, George, I had to find my mute button. Yes, I am.
Caroline, something wrong with your mic, I think.
Oh,
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Not really.
I'll fix it. But to answer your question, yes, I'm in a PFI.
Yeah, that's a little bit better now, Caroline.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any suggestions at all in terms of what we could use 360s for?
George, it's Brian McKenna here. I think
Brian.
you've already mentioned a key one, which is stock condition surveys for the external of high-rise buildings, particularly when you're surveying things like balconies and the conditions of balconies, roof spaces. It's a very, very effective way. As long as you get the detail, sufficient detail in the images, it's a very effective way. But combined, mounted on a drone, for example, scanning up the external of an entire block.
Absolutely. Justin.
Yeah, so we've done that here at Erie Miller. We've utilised our drone technology to do a condition survey of a roof and facade. We've uploaded the point cloud data from that, and then tagged that with points of interest in our system, and then we've been able to share our screen with the managing agent for that block. And we had a Teams call where we zoomed into the areas which were of concern, and they was able to obviously get that understanding from that rather than just getting pictures. We was able to use that 3D point cloud model to demonstrate the areas that they needed to obviously look into.
Yeah,
That's
fantastic.
excellent. Is that something that you'd be able to show us at some stage, Justin? Could you show us an example of that? Not now, obviously, but is
Yeah.
that something that you could show?
Yeah, of course. If you give me 5 minutes, I could show you an example.
Oh, that'd be great.
So bear with me.
In the meantime, Barry, could you just show, you know, what we looked at yesterday, the data center? Could you quickly show that? What we've been doing, we've got a couple of projects on that we have got the opportunity to bring people into on a sort of voluntary basis, but you can use this to learn. And if you're interested in getting involved in actually actively looking at some of these projects, maybe put your name down on the site on the chat. Richard, what do you think we should call it? Maybe
just put project.
Yeah, okay.
Just put project and we'll know what it is.
Yeah. So in other words, if you fancy getting involved and come on to that, then carry on, Justin.
So yeah, so I can share my screen if that's okay, George.
Go ahead, yeah, please.
So I've just got this on here, but this is the drone footage for one of our projects.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, they had issues with kind of water ingress on the roof. So we done a drone survey of the building, and what we was able to do was get it into a kind of use the footage to then produce the point cloud data from the drone. And then what we done, we tagged certain areas that we thought were of particular interest, and then we've kind of uploaded, we've tagged more photos to those areas, so they can see it obviously in higher resolution, along with videos that we provided the client. But what we can see from here is if you click on each one, it brings you to that area. Obviously you can search it in the search bar, so you can see where all the facade damage is of on all the areas of the building of concern. That's just a little flavour for what we have done. And then we shared this with the client in a meeting. We got them on the Teams call, and they found it extremely useful.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. So, one of the questions, obviously, that I'm asked when we talk about doing this is, how does this relate and compare with an experienced surveyor, building surveyor, going to site and poking things and touching them? Is that would you say that that's necessary still? Or are we saying, what's the sort of productivity gain, for example, of you doing it this way?
Yeah, I think to a degree, obviously, with doing this way, they didn't need to put scaffolding up to access the roof, because as you can see on top here, there's no actual roof access.
Yeah.
So we was able to obviously utilise the drone so they could actually obviously mitigate the need for the scaffolding, to actually get up there and assess it. So this was a first port of call that was able to obviously do that. They could then obviously send this to and use this data obviously to send to contractors to obviously price for areas, or send it to obviously facade engineers to look at the obviously the issues that the building had.
And what about doing condition assessment of windows, for example? Would you be able to do that and say that there's another 20 years left on those windows? Or
yeah, I mean you need, it doesn't, you're always going to need to obviously have your experienced guys on site to really check things out. Obviously intrusive surveys, finding wall types, all that sort of thing, you're not going to find out from a photo or a point cloud. So you're always going to need that.
So it's doing that first pass, as it were.
Yeah, I believe so. And obviously it's just identifying in areas of concern, really.
Yeah, so the point about this is what Justin's doing there, that's in the Navis cloud application, isn't it?
That's
and
correct, yeah.
Those tags are actually in the application, whereas what we're able to do with that, because we use Navis as well, but what we're able to do is take that 360 and to add information into, well, actually tie it back to the database, which means that's what I would then call, this is a sort of semi-smart 360, but what we're actually doing is embedding the asset data itself, or we're bringing the 360 into the asset data, which makes it all connectable and searchable. Thank you, Justin. That's fantastic.
Yep, no problem. I'll stop sharing now.
Caroline, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly, George?
Can now. Yeah,
okay,
thank you.
Good. I just wanted to add on to what Justin and them are doing there. I worked with a contractor. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what software they were using, but the whole drone thing worked for us because just to do an initial survey, because the building was at the corner of a busy intersection. So and it had no roof edging. So the whole point of using the drone was to go on the roof, identify the weak areas of the roof. Like I think someone mentioned thermal heating or somewhere in the comments I saw, and we did it for leaks. So it was able to identify without us having to spend extra of blocking off the roads and going that extra mile. But initially we could tell what assets sat on the roof, and your earthing and all that, what is on the roof, what aircon are on the roof, and where are the weak points on the roof. So that's actually quite good, but I'm not sure the contractor used what software they used.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Yeah. Barry, would you be able to there's two things I'd like you to show, if you don't mind. Show what you did yesterday, and also on the data center, and then if you could show the London Solvo or cesium. Carry on.
Okay. So yesterday we were talking about 360 imagery, and what we call visual asset management has been a term that's been used for the last 20 odd years. But it's how you use spatial imagery, whether that's 360 drone imagery or just a simple photograph out of your camera in asset management. And what I showed yesterday was, if I can get it up, I'll share my screen here. Hold on. Share my window. Well, what I'll do first off is I'll show the cesium thing first.
Yep, cool.
Can you see? I'll just make this a bit bigger, actually, so you can see. So actually, what we're going to be doing with this project that we started talking about yesterday. Can you see a map of London?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, this is where I do my EastEnders trail thing. So one of the projects we're working on now is a project where we're going to be able to use as an exemplar of how you go about documenting a building through its life cycle. This is an existing property, it's not a new build, and there's all sorts of reasons why, in this case, Tower Hamlets want this documented. But the platform, and there's lots of platforms, like you've just seen, the Navis one, and there's other ones as well. We're going to be using a slightly different one, which allows us to aggregate lots of different bits of information. And if I zoom in here in true EastEnders fashion, okay, so this is using Google Earth and Google Model, but actually we're going to be using this template and all the 3D models, and then we'll be able to insert as I move in. So this here is Watney Market. This bit here, did you see my hand?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the market. Okay, but what we've got here as well is, oh, if I switch in, moving, fly down it. This isn't a particularly good model, but actually, let's get. We'll come out of the retail shop. Okay, I don't know how I've done that. Okay, but let me have another go here. I need to get out of the street view thing. Hold on a second. Well, we don't yet get out of the street view. Okay, get out street view, and we'll go and fly back out the way again. Pilot error. Sorry about that, but okay. But we've got a 3D model, but what we're going to be doing is actually producing a much more accurate one of these, and using scanning and drone work. And so it will be put into context in this 3D model of the whole city. But what we're also doing is using 360 imagery to take a tour around this, to do a whole slew of, let's go out, let's come back out again so you can get a better view. There's a problem with Google Earth. Hold on a minute. What have I done here? No, that's not going to work. I'll shut that down for a minute, because I've just gone off track with that. User error. But we're able on a website to view all these interactively, so it could be used for 100 different applications. But that's what we're going to be doing. But the 360 imagery, if I put that up, can you see? Are you able to see a box now?
No.
No, let me stop sharing that.
We're still on Google Earth.
Yeah, I'll come back and reshare that. Hold on a minute. I'll stop sharing and I'll share something else.
Okay.
Share my other window now.
So the purpose of this, if I can just explain, what Tower Hamlets need is to bring together all the fire safety information, so that they can have compartmentation information, but also the information about heating and ventilation and the like. And then just Barry's just showing you the data center. So bear with me a second, Barry, if you just stop moving around.
Oh, sorry,
for a second. Yeah. So as far as Watney Market's concerned, we're going to be going out to procurement in about probably a month's time to actually get the scanning done, and we're then going to do 360s of the internals, and then turn that into asset information, which is then going to go into the rest of the Tower Hamlets portfolio. We've got 60 odd buildings that we've already had done. Ridge did the scans, and what we want to do is to use this as a project, so that if there are other similar projects that other councils and local authorities and housing associations may be doing, we can learn from each other on that. So bringing that together. Right, carry on, Barry. So this is another project. So just to be clear, we've got two projects that we're opening up for collaboration. This one's a data center, a large site in Halifax that is going to be substantially renovated over the next sort of 6 months. And by we've taken the 360s to be able to feed towards that.
Like I said, what we're doing here is using 360 imagery, which is fairly straightforward for most people to do. But the challenge with 360 is just getting a reasonable definition so you can use it for asset management. But in particular areas, lots of 360 cameras struggle when they're trying to do plant rooms because areas like this are not lit. So what we've done here is just taken the 360 and done some tweaking on the processing just to brighten it all up. But we'll be using this 360 imagery for both the data center and for the Watney Market project, and stitching these together to produce what I call a visual asset register or visual asset management. But these projects will be open to everybody to try and come and experiment with. We're going to try and put these, well, not try, we will be putting these online for people to contribute and use just to test different things out. Because I do 360, there's lots of different platforms you can use. You can use the Navis one, there's things like iSight, you can even use Google Street View if you want to. But what we're trying to do is come up with a simple way, and not a standard way, but sort of like a best practice, which we share as a community, so you can take out. So we'd be able to mix drone footage, so like the inspection of the facades and the balconies, 360 internally like this, so it could be do for asset management for plant rooms or condition surveys. The point of it is it's one common platform you could try and do everything with, and for us as a community to play about and use as a test demonstration site to figure out what's the best practice that we can share. That makes sense to everyone?
Yep.
Okay.
No.
No.
Sorry, maybe I'm slow or something. It's the first I've really heard about this. Right, George, you said about collaboration. What does that mean?
It means
collaboration on the market one and this one.
Yeah, people who are interested in using 360s can come on and understand how to actually identify assets. There's going to be libraries that they can use to tag things or assess condition or look at health and safety risks. Simon's just put in the chat an example of a door being locked. So to be able to walk through a building virtually using the 360s, but because we will have them as intelligent 360s, to be able to both add information to them and also connect them to other things. So being able to connect them to risk assessments and things like that. That was right.
So that's they'll be the people. Our people will be able to do that, or just view
correct.
It.
No.
If you imagine this as Richard, imagine this as a sandbox for anybody who wants to play about with it. They can do and experiment and look at different things.
So they can actually do things.
Yeah. The point is actually do things. If they want to tag things up, we'll show them how to tag things up. Okay, simply. And there's different granular ways of applying this. So some people may just want to, like you were doing, Justin, like you were doing on the balconies and using Navis for tagging. It might be something just really simple. This is something I need you to look at, Mr. Maintenance Man, when you go in. Okay, just communicating a note. It might be as basic as that. But also it can be much more sophisticated, where you're actually linking these 360s or drone imagery or ortho imagery to a database where you can then look and start to tag and manage your asset information for whatever application you may want. It might be to do with Regulation 38. It might be to do with Martin's Law, which is going to be a big thing we're going to have to get prepared for next year. So it's actually, we're trying to just come up with a sandbox so people can play, and then there'll be a community like myself and who you can come on and ask questions and say, we'd like to be able to do this. And then we'll go, right, okay, well, what's your problem? Okay, and let's see how we can use this and 360 and a database like George's or whoever's to give ease of use. I mean, it's already people are saying like, we did this, you know, we'd use drones for looking at roof spaces and things like that. Well, yeah, that's like 101. That's straightforward. There's some really sexy things you can do with this technology. So the idea is to come up with 2 projects that we're working on where we've got control of it, where we can share it with the rest of the community. Just get
brilliant, Barry. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Really?
Shall we put Sandbox in the chat if you want to be part of that?
Yeah, that would be perfect. If we can put Sandbox, and then I can start a dialogue, and we'll set up a separate channel for those people who want to do it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Now we have to recognise. So just to be clear, what we're using a couple of real projects for this that we're managing, right? So we're using it as a learning exercise, both for us and for the clients. But because of the fact they're in a database, when you've done your tagging and things, we probably won't retain those things because, you know, quite frankly, we need to understand the, you know, where they're coming from. The intention of it is just to get people to think outside the box as to how they're going to want to interface with these things.
Just to explain, George, just to be clear, there's going to be 2. We'll have our own production environment that we control, okay, but we'll open up a duplicate as a sandbox. Yeah. So you can you'll be able to add, and it's not going to impact our deliverables. Thank you very much, because we've got to keep control over that. But
you don't want me going on there playing with it and altering all the client data very much, do you?
No, exactly. I mean, the point of it is you can go on it and break it.
Yeah,
and no one's
that's the whole idea of the sandbox.
Yeah. So that's really our concept, is to try and share best practice amongst us. So I know a bit about how you can view things and spatial imagery. Other people are experts of SQL. We're going to have subject matter experts who may well be able to go around and say, review particular aspects, like let's look at the fire systems, etc. Other people might be experts in disability access, other people in retail space and valuation. The point is, let's have one environment, and these are both ideal ones in terms of Watney Market in particular, because it's such a mixed use.
So we've got at least one more, possibly 2 different types of projects. One is a health trust. So we're hoping to have a health trust up next week that we can look at now, and also schools. So we can look at that as well. So we've got something there that's different use cases that people can access. We're experimenting with this, by the way. It's as a collaborative venture. Sometimes collaborations work really, really well, and sometimes you're in an empty room, as it were. But I think this is good work. One good way of doing it. Sorry, Barry.
I think that the other interesting thing is people don't know what they don't know. And that's really is to find a way of showing and having a real life job that we can show different things on, and other people contribute as well. You know, there's going to be people who are experts in window renovation or a million different things. But if we can show it in one exemplar where everybody can access it and understand it, and then communicate, oh, we've just added a new work stream and a video on YouTube, click on this and it'll show you how to do it. That's sort of what I'm trying to do, to spread it around. And the visual asset data, the spherical imagery, the point cloud, the 3D model, the cesium environment, where we can insert this directly into a 3D city.
Yeah.
And click on all the HRBs and then click on that, and then you've got all the data associated with those HRBs.
George, you've been doing one-to-ones with people on different things, but you've not done anything on this.
No, that's absolutely right.
So is that feasible? Because it's a lot of people got a lot of help out of that, didn't they?
Yes, absolutely. Basically I run out of time a little bit, but I've got some time next week. So if anybody's interested in, so I think to some extent this probably would start as a one-to-one conversation, and then because you're probably you want to talk to colleagues within your organization as to whether you've got some ideas, because the purpose of this, we're opening up our projects to let other people get engaged with them, but we'd obviously like you to do the same. So if you've got projects within your organization where you may be doing this type of thing, then we'd like to, and you're capturing 360s, for example, we'd like you to also open those up so that we can all learn from them, and do things together. So if you'd like to have an initial sort of 15-minute one-to-one with me sometime next week, just drop one-to-one into the chat, and we can. Does that make sense, Richard? Should we do that?
Yeah, put one-to-one in the chat, and then just we'll sort through that and get a we'll get hold of George's diary and see when he's free and put up a doodle poll or something. So if you, but don't worry about that. If you just put one-to-one in the chat, we'll sort it out.
Has anybody got any more any thoughts as to what we've just been talking there? Any suggestions?
I think it's really great, George, what you're doing here. And for me, you know, I work for Camden Borough Council in data architecture, so I'm interested in very much the data side of this. And what this is really doing, it's informing a future strategy for asset management. All this new technology is forming, it will help form the basis for a future strategy of asset management within councils, basically, and housing associations. Because like Barry said, when you don't know what you don't know, and that's part of the problem, people don't know this technology exists. They don't know the great work that you're doing. So I think it can come right up at that strategy level.
Absolutely.
I think you're absolutely right, Brian. I mean, there's some simple things. What we want to try and do, what I want to try and do with this is show what I've got my idea of best practice should look like, but other people have other things and will help improve on that. So we start with something and then we can iteratively improve it. Like there's one simple thing that we're going to be doing on this, which is how do you make sure you're taking the photographs as you go through the years in the same place so you can compare like with like. People don't think about that. They just think I'm just going to walk around with a 360 camera on my head. But that's the easy part. So we're going to be looking at those things, and the idea is to try and get best practice to suit what your slide, George, at the beginning, where you can use 360s, all those different applications. There's a different way of approaching each of those, and maybe what we'll try and do over the space of this isn't going to be something that happens all next week. This is exactly. For me, this is a year-long project.
Yeah. But I think one of the crucial bits, and you've already alluded to this, is where you attach the metadata, and it's the metadata that makes everything searchable within a database schema, within everything. Attaching accurate metadata, asset metadata, to different points in this is the crucial bit for me.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I look at this whole, what I call VAM, visual asset management. Yeah. It's about two things. It's about getting good quality photographs in any lighting conditions. But the main, and you hear me use this word a lot, findability. How do we find the right image and make decisions about it? So you need three things. You need to know where the photograph was taken. You need to know when it was taken. You need to know what it's a photograph of. And that is all metadata. And it's really boring and banal, but that's where the usability really kicks in, because then you can start linking it to things like George's database or some other database or Maximo or some condition, some IoT device where you're looking at sensors of carbon dioxide and things. There's a zillion applications. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's about metadata. I always use this, and people have heard me use this before, this analogy or the metaphor of you've got a fantastic 3D model or 360 imagery, and it's like having an atlas on your coffee table. It looks great, but unless you've got an index at the back, it's useless.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So
and I think the other, sorry, George, the other massive use case for this, is you referred to it, is typical 1960s high-rise buildings, where you
yeah,
don't have a lot of what I'd call raw data. You might have a few PDFs. You've got a very sparse set of data. So you have to look at technology to build up a picture where you can manage those assets in a more effective way.
absolutely. So I mean, just to build on what Justin was showing earlier. So Navis, the camera people, they've built an interface and for their cameras, and that's what a lot of camera companies do, which is great. So Matterport, for example, a lot of people use Matterport to tag in Matterport the information, but what you're doing there, you're just tagging it in that tool. So
Yeah.
in other words, that isn't shareable. You can share it, you can share a view of that on the Navis platform, just like you can with Matterport and just like you can with OpenSpace. But the information itself, the tagging, is not managed in a proper database that is connectable. So what we're doing is making it so that it is all connectable. So it builds a lot more value on that, and means that you're then connected into lots of different, it may be connecting into the O&M, for example, so that you've got the documentation against that asset in that location, or the manufacturer's details. Anyway.
Yeah,
So
I couldn't agree more, George. It has to be integrated in. The real value is when you start to integrate this in, all of this into your core asset management system. Whatever that system is, it's generally it'll be database driven. It has to have an integration into that system, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we are looking at the moment, Brian, and we've actually started talking with 2 or 3 of the big housing maintenance software providers, is actually having it so that we can have a connection directly into their for doing small works. So that's for 2 reasons. One is that you can identify something in the 360 that requires an action, and that can be kicked off straight away with a view of the thing that needs to be fixed in 360, which means that they're not likely to come along and fix the wrong one, which that happens quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also when work is being carried out, you can use it as a way of limiting the risk of maybe somebody that's coming along and putting some new cables in, some new Virgin cables or something like that through a compartment wall. Which wall are they going through? Do they therefore need to, should there be a permit to work for that? So,
exactly.
And
plus also, George,
and
even at a basic level, that 3D imagery we've just been showing, at a very basic level, it helps you to prioritize your remedial work. If you've got, let's say, 70 high-rise blocks, how do you? It's quite manual. It's quite labor intensive to go out and do physical inspections to prioritize your work. And that's a big thing, to be able to prioritize which buildings you should be working on.
Yes. Well, that's a very good point, actually, and that's one of the things we'd like to do with this. We've not yet seen. You've not shown the cesium yet, have you, Barry? That was just Google Earth.
It's the same platform, mate. It's the same
one.
Okay. Yeah, Cesium is Cesium is a user platform which allows you to basically put the whole planet or a whole city in a viewable place. And Cesium actually uses Google Earth's tiles to do that. But the beauty of Cesium is you can put your own models and your own point clouds and your own things into it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so it's just the same thing. And just as something, if anybody's interested in learning, and George offered the one-to-ones, I in my LinkedIn account talk about this quite a lot. So if you're not following me on LinkedIn, please follow me, because I talk daily about these sort of things and link to blog sites and articles. It might be a useful thing, because it's not just this community we're talking to. There are other communities.
Yeah.
It's not just this group, but there's a much wider audience that you may want to plug into. Sort of, I'm using LinkedIn as the major conduit for sharing information and best practice, and trying to avoid. I've made thousands of mistakes over the years. I just don't want you to make them.
Okay, so we've just got 5 minutes left. Is there anybody else on the call that that's interested in asking questions, or have you got projects that you think you might be able to use 360s on? I mean, clearly we can have a chat on a one-to-one basis if that helps, but have you got any ideas at the moment?
Well, just to share one, if no one's got one, I've just, the reason I was late is that I've just got off a conversation where we're talking about 360s, and this is probably the sexiest application of 360s I've ever come across, and it's actually to have a library for film sets and film locations. It's, if you want to film something, there's a library of all these places around the planet, the stately homes and grungy areas and spaces, and someone wants me to compile a library of these. I mean, we go from, fire stoppers to, film production sets and stuff like that. It's just a fascinating field, but I just thought I'd share that because it's something that you don't tend to think of. So yeah, anyway.
So I'm leaving it open for.
Sorry, Barry, just on that filming, it's quite interesting because obviously I have a drone, and like when I go far walking in the Lake Districts, I normally get my drone. My drone follows me. It's just a DJI, so it's quite easy to work with. And I do like short filming of that.
Yep.
Is that the sort of filming that you're talking about, and just filing that way in bits and pieces?
No, it's really what they call location scouting. So if I want to do, the next Game of Thrones, or I want to do a house thing, is showing people, directors and cameramen and the locations people who have got to put the food trucks for the film crew around. So it's a way of actually showing environments, and then people say, now, well, we need to book that to film X, Y, and Z. So, but there's also, like, you will by accident come across some great location sites, and you may well want to upload that. So if someone wants to do, the next Ivanhoe or Rob Roy or Robin Hood film, there's a location. But it's 360 immersive technology gives you the ability, I would say, to be there from anywhere. And whether you're doing it with your iPhone, or you've handily got a drone, or you're doing it as a more robust procedure where you're doing hundreds of these to document your assets, it's all about some simple technology and trying to make it so you don't have to spend a lot of IT and give your IT person a heart attack.
Okay, so we've just got a couple of minutes left. One of the things that I think we'd also like to talk about is how we can take EPC data and apply that to buildings, apartments, and things like that. Now, that's something that I think would be useful, but I don't know of the people that are on here that are involved in social housing, would being able to look at energy performance and things like that be useful at this sort of level?
Yeah, I think so, George. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why, Brian? How would you use that?
Well, the EPC, as you know, I mean, Camden, I've got a lot of social housing. So they get external contractors to actually do the EPC, and they take it in, and then they import it into their internal systems. But I'm not so sure they get it in as raw data. I think it just comes in as PDFs. I need to double check this.
Yeah.
But if you can get the raw data, then obviously, like anything else, it's much easier to manipulate that, to search it, to find it. They also do things like scenario-based, how to improve your energy performance, like maybe double glazing, triple glazing. So they'll run through scenarios on how to get your building more energy performant, basically. Yeah.
Well, that's a very interesting use case, actually, isn't it? Because you're identifying what needs to be done. And then you're using the 360s and the asset information model to identify maybe over a 2-year program or something like that, how you can prioritize things.
Prioritize, exactly. Yeah, to get the energy performance much better. Yeah. They can do scenario based things, like if you do this X, Y, and Z, replace all your windows with double glazing, obviously scenarios like that, your building be much more energy efficient. Yeah, that type of thing.
Cool. Is Dave Williams, are you there, David?
I certainly am.
Do you do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, one of the things we were talking about yesterday in another meeting was around being able to see into roof voids to check, levels of insulation and all that sort of stuff. And I can see where the cameras would probably be ideal for capturing that information as a visual thing rather than just sort of the raw data that gets put onto an EPC. So, yeah.
Yeah, is anybody with the new law that's come in? It's gone out of my brain for the minute. The mold law. What's that called?
Oh, it's the name of the person, the
AWABs.
person.
So that's
yeah,
AWABs
that's it.
law.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Is that kicking in with social housing now in terms of looking at because there's a range of different things, isn't there? There's obviously the ventilation side of things.
So that's linking into linked into future discussions around processes. We've redesigned our damping mold repairs process as well, and we're ensuring that we're able to flag these or be able to track these evidence these as part of the TSMs. So that's going on within the repairs sort of space, and then also linking into building safe building resident safety.
Yeah. What about sensors, Dami? Is that being are you installing humidity sensors and things like that?
So I don't entirely know, but I know that we do have some carbon monoxide, so that's separate. So we do currently have carbon monoxide sensors, I think, in some of our buildings.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if we have humidity sensors as part of that initiative.
And the other big one that's underway at the moment, I think, is heating systems, district heating systems, and how that heat is then delivered to individual. There's legislation that's kicking in on that as well. I'm just thinking of different initiatives that may be all benefiting from the 360 and the connected information. Just any thoughts on that?
There's a project I'm working on at the moment, George, where we're looking at IoT and connecting 360 imagery up in schools, looking at carbon dioxide levels, because apparently that's what sends children to sleep in the afternoon, high CO2 levels, and they're looking at what they can do for ventilation. But that is using 360, so they can actually see things, but at the same time, they have to have a 3D model there so they can monitor and manage the airflow models. So that's an as-built Revit model that they're using there with the volumes and things. But there's all that, there's just hundreds and hundreds of applications, and I think having the sandbox is a platform where we can try different ideas out and collaborate and share things, and just record simple YouTube videos of how we can do it and share those amongst us. I'm patently aware that there's, you know, a lot of the things we need subject matter experts to help us develop those things.
Quite interesting, you mentioned carbon dioxide. So carbon monoxide sensors and smoke sensors, you know, are legally required. With carbon monoxide, particularly whether there's gas or solid fuel in the property. Interestingly, in the actual the government legislation, they themselves make the mistake where they talk about carbon monoxide in one area, and then another area they mention carbon dioxide, and it's monoxide that is the one that tends to be and also the one that it's supposed to be legally in place. Often what happens is the gas engineer will go in if it's a combi boiler, and they'll check that sensor and replace it if necessary. But it's an interesting thing that even the legislation makes confuses carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide.
We're all looking at legislation crafted by non-subject civil servants, subject expert civil servants at the end of the day. So just look at what's going through Parliament at the moment. There's just so much obfuscation and ambiguity, and but that's just the nature of things, is how we interpret that safely, I think. So, but no, you're absolutely right. It's just looking at some of the stuff you get, you have to think, who actually wrote this? But anyway, that's something else.
Good.
For another
Okay.
conversation.
All right, Richard, shall we wrap up?
Yeah, let's wrap up with a reminder of the 3 things for you to put in the chat if you're interested in pursuing. Sandbox, which is the platform that you can get access to, the projects you can get access to, and basically play around with. So put Sandbox in the chat if you want to get involved in that. George's one-to-ones. Anybody who wants to get involved, have a preliminary chat with George about progressing and getting a bit more detail of the kind of things you're looking for yourself and how this can help you. Put one-to-one in the chat. And the first one was projects, and I've forgotten what it was.
Well, that's really the Sandbox, I think, Richard.
Right, so we'll count projects and Sandbox as the same. That's fine. So put either. And then one-to-one for George.
Cool. Okay.
Excellent. You'll be hearing from us. You'll get videos and high point notes and video links for this probably sometime next week.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks all.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.